Hey, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. This is your host, Joe Slepsky, and you've tuned in to the podcast where we watch every episode of G.I. Joe sequentially in order from start to finish, and we comment on it Mystery Science Theater style. And today's episode is a little Street Fighter / kickboxer-esque episode entitled Ninja Holiday, and I am joined by fan of the show and friend of the show, Mr. Michael Sheridan, otherwise known online as Joe's Reassembled. Michael Sheridan, welcome to Joe on Joe.
Hey, how you doing? Glad to be here.
Fantastic. We're very happy to have you. So, like I said, you're known online as Joe's Reassembled, and primarily from what I've seen, you put together G.I. Joe stuff. You do a lot of unboxing videos, things like that. Tell me what you do with your Joe's Reassembled brand.
Basically, it just I was a massive G.I. Joe fan when I was a kid. I loved it. And I had gotten rid of all my toys a long time ago and sort of figured I'd forgotten about it. You know, like I kind of let it go. I accepted that they were gone and that was it. And I was cleaning out my parents' apartment one day, and I actually had a big case full of the different pieces. Like, it was this whole drawer setup thing that I think was for sewing a kit or something like that. And I saw it and I was like, you know what? It's time to say goodbye to this stuff. And I threw it all away. Like about maybe a year or so later, my mother found a bunch of my G.I. Joes, and they were broken in pieces and all this kind of stuff. And I'd realized, and then all of a sudden it hit me that I threw away all this stuff, and I felt horrible.
Oh, no.
I felt so guilty.
Murderer.
What the heck was I thinking? So then I decided, like, well, I miss this stuff. I do love these things, but I don't know what to do with it. So then I decided I would just make a hobby out of rebuilding everything. So I started reassembling the characters, you know, replacing the rubber bands, cleaning the rust off the screws, all that kind of stuff. And then I've just slowly kind of been rebuilding based off of my original, you know, whatever original figures I had left, and then rebuild from there.
I love that so much. That's such a great project. That's so cool. How long have you been at this?
I think I started it about 2 or 3 years ago, but I've been negligent in it in the past year because I've just been focusing on other things.
Well, listen, you're a busy man. You've got two kids and a lovely wife. Is this all correct?
Yes, that is correct.
How old are your kids?
My son is 14. My daughter is 10.
Yeah, that's enough to keep you busy, so you can't put your G.I. Joes together. I think you're okay.
Yeah, I guess it's logical.
You're calling in from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And you told me that you are the video editor. You run the video department for the New York Daily News.
I do.
Tell me about that. That's fascinating. What do you do for them?
Basically, it's a combination of things, but we deal with like the raw video that comes in for shooting or crime or that kind of stuff, to creating social media videos and short documentaries, things like that.
How long have you been in that game?
I've been there I've been at the Daily News for about 10 years, but I've been running the video department for the last 3.
Billy Joel sang about you.
Yes.
Yes, he did.
Yes. In several different ways, because I live near Allentown. So,
oh my God, even better.
I'm constantly connecting with Billy Joel.
Oh my God. Only 80s Joel though. Only 80s Joel.
Yes.
Exclusively 80s Joel. So, did you always want to work in the news field, or were you did you get into it from your love of video, or how'd that come about?
I got into it because I needed a job.
Well,
mostly.
It's
off and off.
Line forms of the right, you know.
My father worked at the Daily News for about 20 years. Excellent. And when I graduated high school, I moved. I was living outside of Philadelphia at that time, and I moved back to New York City, and I needed a job, and he hooked me up as a copy boy there, which is like the bottom rung of the ladder in a newspaper.
Sure.
And
yeah,
I did that for 2 years.
I know that because both J. Jonah Jameson and Perry White always screamed about, I started as a copy boy. I worked my way up to the top of this respective paper.
Yeah, nobody says that anymore though, because it's never true. Because I think most people don't know what a copy boy is anymore. But
do they still have copy boys?
They do, but it's not the same. Before computers, you had a lot to do as a copy boy.
Yeah.
You'd be running all over the place. I actually worked at a newspaper in Nashville where I got to be more of a traditional copy boy. or what the role of a copy boy actually did. But now it's all computers, so a lot of that stuff that they used to do is gone. You just didn't, because basically, essentially, a copy boy was running copy back and forth. So you'd have to take it from the writers, give it to the editor,
Sure.
and the editors, you give it to the layout people. You were always running around all the time and then doing whatever needed to be done.
Yeah, I've seen that in it dramatized in All the President's Men. Like Woodward and Bernstein, they'd finish off a paragraph and call for copy, and someone would just run over and rip it out of their hands.
Yeah, you bring it to one basket, drop it in another basket, and all that. But that's all long gone now.
That's crazy. That's so crazy. So walk me through a normal day for you at the Daily News. What what's it like? What are your hours? Are you on call? Because news can happen anytime, kind of a thing.
Well, we're a very small department, so yeah, we're pretty much 24/7. I'll start off the day by going into the office, and usually have to catch up on whatever happened overnight. Like just the other day, we had New York City, the New York Police Department released its first body cam in a shooting incident. They only just got body cams.
They just got body cams?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of major city departments don't have body cams.
Wow.
But NYPD had kind of, as I understood it, had fought against it for a long time, but they only just started getting them recently. And then there was a shooting incident with a guy with a knife or a gun, and they released that, and that was their first. It was a big deal because it was the first, how the heck are we going to do all this? Because everybody does it differently. You think it's some kind of simple thing, but it's actually not.
Yeah, yeah. So you get an email, do you get a bat signal, like a Joe's Reassembled signal shoot through the sky? What's that?
His logo gets shot up into the sky. I have to keep watching it day and night. It's exhausting.
Well, that's what your wife needs to play the role of Alfred, right?
That's it. And she actually fixes all the stuff. She does my computer for me and everything. It's really. But
and always brings you a meal, and then laments how you're so busy you won't eat the meal.
That's it. And she's insistent on ruining my secret identity all the time. Bringing women into my cave,
which is awkward when she
because she's my wife.
Remembers that she's your wife. Yeah, she's like, but I know this is my job, but yet still, here's Vicky Vale
of being Alfred and the wife at the same time.
Oh, awkward. I feel like we just played into Frederick Wertham's wet dream nightmare. That's a really cool gig, man. Thanks for sharing some stuff about that. And tell me about your channel. So you're on Twitter, you're at Joe's Reassembled, and on Instagram you're at Joe's_Reassembled. So talk to me about the kind of things you tweet or Instagram out.
Usually I kind of use just the Twitter to help promote the site and interact with the other Joe fans. It is interesting because it feels like the G.I. Joe fan community is smaller, but as a result, everybody kind of gets to interact with each other more than, say, Star Trek or Star Wars or anything, because those things are just so massive.
Yeah. You mentioned Star Trek. I can see over your shoulder you've got a bunch of starships models, and I think you're wearing a Trek T-shirt.
Yeah, I like Star Trek.
Oh, that's great. No, I co-host a Star Trek podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, called Saturday Morning Trek. Might as well throw a plug out to my boy. It's Aaron Harvey's podcast, and I co-host occasionally. And it's called Saturday Morning Trek. We talk about, much like Joe on Joe, we talk about the Trek cartoon. Okay. Are you excited about Discovery?
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited about. I'm looking forward to seeing the new show. I mean, I'm not sure what to think of it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that. I'm excited about the idea of spending money on another streaming service that I don't really want, except I'm going to watch one show.
That is for sure. That is absolutely for sure. Regardless, and that's no finger pointing, honestly, because I understand why CBS would do it. You understand why Marvel's saying they're going to do it, but it's just too much. It's going to be too much. It's a lot now. It's going to be too much in about 2 years.
Yeah, because assumingly they're all going to have their own services, but then eventually it's going to get. And then what? We're going to be paying for a cable service that then bundles.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Someone's going to swoop in, and then they're going to say, "Listen, if you pay $8 a month to these 5 services. That's $40 a month. If you pay us $50 a month, we'll wrap it up in one bundle for you, and you just have to remember one login, and everyone will be like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all that stuff gets so easily. It's always funny when I watch this documentary about the history of cable, and then you paid for the cable channels, and then they kind of point out like, yeah, but the cable channels you purchase, you pay for, have commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point is you were supposed to be paying for the service so you didn't get commercials, but now it all has commercials. Mm-hmm. So it's like all of it gets corrupted in some fashion or another, and you end up paying more money for nothing.
Completely. It's like satellite radio, the same thing. It was satellite radio, no commercials. Then Stern went, I'm a big Stern fan, but now not only is his subscription above the cost of your XM satellite radio, but then he also airs commercials on it, and it's like, what are we doing? What are we even doing here?
Yeah, no, it's insane.
I feel like we just started a revolution. This is we should be having this conversation. We're going to be like the Cobra, but against streaming. Like we're gonna find the the remains of a desiccated Blockbuster video and start having some rallies outside in front of it. And they're like, that was the dawn of Cobra. They stood outside of an old video store and they talked about how much streaming is going to just rip too much out of their pockets.
And somehow that turned into, let's take over the world.
Absolutely. So today's episode is Ninja Holiday. You remember this episode from growing
up? I remembered it after I did a pre-watch, and I did sort of, I slowly remembered it as I was watching it, because every time I think about G.I. Joe episodes, I only ever really flash to the first season. I find I don't think of post Serpentor.
Right.
But then I watched the episode. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I remember this now.
Yeah, it's. I remember I had that feeling when they started airing. I want to say it was around 2000. They started airing G.I. Joe episodes on one of the deep cable channels, and I was living alone at the time and like fresh out of college. I was very excited about it, right? And I started tuning into the episodes, and I was like, I hadn't thought about this episode because I had seen them all, but it was just what you described. Like I hadn't thought about this episode in forever. Like it was just it was a whole new experience. So, and this is the one of those, because you don't get a lot of Sgt Slaughter in the second season, but now we are starting to get a lot of Sgt Slaughter. And I wonder if that was like a production thing, where they had so many episodes, they were building so much and they couldn't get a hold of him, because Slaughter's a busy guy. Sure,
yeah, and I had forgotten that he was really in it that much. I mean, whenever I think of Sgt Slaughter, I just think of G.I. Joe the movie.
Right.
And I forget that he was really actually a significant player in the show at that point.
Yeah, on a few episodes, yeah. Like these last 10 episodes, he's showing up a whole lot. Like he's a ton of this one. He's in a ton of the next one we're gonna do.
He's the main guy of all Serpentor, the whole Serpentor storyline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he was Serpentor's nemesis. That was Serpentor was his wrestling heel.
Maybe I sometimes I think I'm just blocking out these aspects of the.
So do you? Wait a minute. Are you saying you don't like Serpentor? I love Serpentor. It's okay. We're in safe. You're in a safe space here. We're all friends.
I'm not saying I disliked Serpentor, but I guess at that stage is when G.I. Joe maybe was started to stray a little farther than I liked. I think I'm more in line with the kind of more hardcore or more grounded military approach, as opposed to like when it strays too far into the sci-fi part. I kind of like
sure.
But I love G.I. Joe the movie, so maybe that's a contradiction. But
we're getting ready to record G.I. Joe the movie, and so I was doing a rewatch of that, and it gets pretty crazy.
Yeah. And the Cobra-La thing is like it's a big leap into a totally new direction for the for G.I. Joe.
Yes. So not necessarily.
But I liked it. There's aspects of that thing that I love, and I still love, despite.
Well, it's well told. Like it's well told. We talked about this in some of these crazier episodes. You can do crazy sci-fi and tell it well, and then you can do sci-fi and tell it kind of iffy. I think. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but the next episode is G.I. Joe and the Golden Fleece, and that is a little too crazy sci-fi, but they do tell it well, though.
Yeah.
Like everyone behaves normal. Like it's a little too much, but it's told it's still told within their boundaries of their personalities at least. So, but let's
that's what's fun about G.I. Joe, because it goes all over the place.
Yeah,
and it can, it has that ability. Well, like the comics were more grounded. The show kind of loosened it up a lot, where you could tell all sorts of different things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's still pretty cool.
Totally. Well, I'm excited. We're going to talk Ninja Holiday. It's a little bit of Street Fighter, a little bit of Kickboxer, and a whole lot of G.I. Joe. So Michael Sheridan at Joe's Reassembled. Oh, as long as you're online, everybody. If you want to find me, you can find me at Joe on Joe Pod. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. And if you want to be a guest on this podcast, I would love to have you on. So, Michael, without any further ado, you ready to rock and roll on Ninja Holiday?
I am ready.
Awesome. Well, here we go.
Yo, Joe!
Yo, Joe, indeed.
We'll fight for freedom.
So you threw away your toys, but what kind of vehicles did you have? Did you throw away your vehicles too?
Oh. No, I actually had given away my vehicles. That at least was positive. We went to like this shelter for battered women once, my mother and I, and she took me there, and I gave all my vehicles to them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
For kids that were there. When I was like in high school, I gave them all. I had a lot. I had the I'm blanking all the names now. I had the big Cobra jet, the black jet.
The Night Raven.
Yeah, I had the other G.I. Joe jet, the backwards wings, the ones that were in the title.
Conquest X30.
Yeah, I had the snowmobile, that the Cobra one with the guy with the red hood, and he had the.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I've never had that one. The episode's starting called Ninja Holiday. It's written by Michael Charles Hill, and like 3/4 of every episode of G.I. Joe, we open in a swamp. Based on my childhood, I expected swamps and quicksand to be just prevalent.
I like how it's sci-fi that you see pop his head up, and then all of a sudden wetsuit. It's like he's switching. Is that an error?
Yeah, I don't. That's a good point out. There's Polly's cousin. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Are they? I know Sci-Fi's on the mission. Later.
Yeah, he's in it.
Congratulations, Dr.
Well,
but it seemed like you're with wetsuit, and then it seems like it's hard to tell.
Why is Sci-Fi underwater in swamp water of all things without a breather on?
Right. Well, he doesn't need it. It's all in his mask.
Yeah. So we've got Serpentor, and this is a neat glimpse. Oh, geez. Sgt. Slaughter throws his hat in. And the guy recognized, well, one, I think his hat was still drawn on his head when he jumped that bridge there. But he recognized it. It's like his calling card. Sgt. Slaughter's calling. Right. Oh, yeah, there's Cypher.
Well, James Bond's got his martini.
Right.
Sgt. Slaughter's got his.
Yeah. Totally. This is actually a little bit like the opening of the movie Predator.
Yes.
You remember that when they were were like hitting the village and everything, and then it unlocks a whole new bigger adventure. That's kind of what's happening here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, or you said when we were off mic a little bit, you also do a podcast. What podcast?
I do. It's called the For the Love of Movies podcast. It's me and a guy I work with. He's younger than me, so the whole shtick is I pick a movie that he should have seen, but he's too young to have seen. Then we talk about that movie.
That's great.
I've tortured him endlessly with movies he's really hated that I made him watch.
Like what?
Well, I watched Conan the Barbarian, the original, not the stupid remake.
Oh, amazing! That movie's amazing.
We just got through the Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure movies.
Fantastic, and he doesn't like
there
these?
was blood there. I meant to mention, it seems like there's blood in that brief moment, but I guess that's the coloring.
Well,
like sometimes Sgt. Slaughter punches somebody, and you see like the flash of punch. Initially, I thought it was like, oh, is there blood? But I think there was. There was
a little something that flung off a dude's face when he kicked him in the face. I do like that he's basically, they have him doing wrestling maneuvers, which is cool. Like he really is doing wrestling moves.
Yeah, very true to who he is.
Yeah, and he is just they draw him like a mountain of a man.
Yes.
Mountain of a man.
He's huge.
Yeah. Also, this episode, he has some of the best quips on this episode, just as we go along, let's try to capture him because he has just amazing quips.
Yeah.
And one-liners. Like, it's ridiculous how good his dialogue is in this episode.
You have been selected to participate
so we
in the
find
martial arts competition.
that
Good luck, son.
wetsuit,
Pierre Lafont.
you know, or as we like to say, William Cat. He's a kung fu fighter or like street fighter, and he's
I guess so.
Yeah, apparently, and he's going to compete in international competition, which Slaughter's very upset about.
An international criminal.
And it's run by an international criminal, and that's why Slaughter's upset about it.
Is that clear?
And why doesn't Wetsuit know that?
You would think, like.
Wait for me. As a
Well,
boss while I
listen.
settle up our account.
This is here it is, the G.I. Joe Express card once again.
They're a highly trained special missions force, but they're clearly not a secret special mission.
No, well, listen, you got to earn those points, man.
I guess so.
We earned-
what do you
we
get
earned-
with G.I. Joe points?
Yeah, we
What-
earned flag points. This is their way of earning flag points. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like, all great, like, Vietnam, like, Platoon and all that stuff, and Good Morning Vietnam, those movies, they send a young kid to, like, blow up a bomb, or, like, they send a young, unassuming, you know, like, villager. You know what I'm saying? That trope of, like, the kid comes in, he's like, hey, mister, here's your bag, you know, and it's got a bomb in it. That's what just happened. They found a little local kid, and they said, hey, go get the guy that answers to Wetsuit's real name.
Yeah.
Check on him.
Yeah.
Very effective ninjas right there. They took out a whole camp full of people couldn't do it, but those two ninjas managed to take him out pretty quick.
Yeah, totally. Like,
with bug spray of some sort, like an odd aerosol can of knockout gas.
True. And you know, and he was also caught unawares, to his credit.
Yeah.
You know, so I get it. And by the way, as I don't know if I'll be able to catch it in the edit, so I better announce it. My dog is apparently melting down, and no one's home to calm her down right now. So we may have a guest star, Mary Jane Watson, on this episode. Depends on how well I can do the edit on this. So we've got a couple of, like, islanders going canoeing up the river with
pale-skinned ones.
Very, very pale. I would think you'd have a better tan.
Yeah, in the jungle.
Yeah,
I would
totally.
say so.
And they go to this castle, and it's, you know, we're going to find out it's where the big competition is. Now, were you a fan of the movie, like, Kickboxer or the Street Fighter franchise?
I like the Street Fighter game, and I love the movie.
You don't love the movie?
I love the movie.
Oh, yeah, the movie's
I thought it was
insanely
great.
fun. Yeah.
Oh, so it's
terrible.
so bad, it's great.
Yeah, it's terrible, but it's insanely fun. And here we go. We see a lineup of fighters, and they look like the Street Fighter guys.
That's Honda right there.
Right. They totally are the Street Fighter guys, which is funny because then later, Street Fighter would become a part of the G.I. Joe universe.
Yeah.
In toys. And I don't think at this point, they were.
And I didn't know that until years later. I had completely fallen out of G.I. Joe at that point.
Yeah, me too.
And I did not know that had happened until years afterwards.
So Sergeant Slaughter is now surrounded by a cadre of those pale natives, and we really need to get some sound. Today's Filecard Feature is on the Cobra-La Royal Guard. That's it. No Filecard name, no special anything, just the Cobra-La Royal Guard. Bred and surgically enhanced for size, strength, and endurance, the Royal Guards of Cobra-La are responsible for the personal protection of Golobulus, supreme ruler of the Hidden Valley and a last descendant of the Serpent Kings. Encased from head to foot in organic insectoid armor, Cobra-La Guards are impervious to any ordnance up to a high explosive anti-tank round. Although formidable in battle, the guards tend to be tactically unimaginative and are relatively useless without close supervision. Quote, there was an attempted coup in Cobra-La around the time when the Emperor Hadrian was building his wall. 500 irate noblemen stormed the inner sanctum of Golobulus' summer palace and were confronted by just 20 guards. Golobulus slept through the entire incident. One guard was slightly wounded. Of the 500 noblemen, there were no survivors. The Cobra-La Guards, of course, were introduced in the G.I. Joe movie. They came originally on the 3-pack in place of Pythona, of course, with Golobulus and Nemesis Enforcer. They have a cool look outside of what they described as like the insectoid armor. They look a little bit like Cobra Eels or Cobra Vipers, you know, but
if you look closer, you see, oh no, they're a little more insectoid than like normal humans wearing armor. They've got red chest shield and shoulder pads and arm guards and things like that. They look like they could be some kind of stratoviper or something like that. In the cartoon, they certainly held their own against the Joe team, at least until, it was time for the Joes to step up and roll out. According to our friends we're at yojo.com, the only release they ever had was on that 3-carded pack. So it was really hard to build an army of Royal Guards, because you would also have an army of Golobuluses and an army of Nemesis Enforcers. Nemesis Enforcers, I guess, would be accurate, which might not be bad, but that could have gotten expensive. But Royal Guards, Cobra-La, I don't know, you probably don't even have any identities. They're kind of like clone troopers. We salute you.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
And he's faced off against like a French, if Major Blood had a French cousin. That's how I would describe this guy.
Yeah, he's very much.
These guys are really pale.
You must defeat these men.
This is like,
Okay, fine.
yeah, this is like,
They're sickly.
yeah. So, how often? Tell me a little bit about your podcast. How often do you guys broadcast?
We taken we got too busy and we took a break for about the last few months, but we usually do it weekly. We've been doing it for the past year. And we managed to get 2 interview episodes, which my goal was to try to get some more interviews on there.
Yeah.
But,
Cool.
and we have guests,
Who
other
did you
people
get?
out there. The first one was Kelly Mahoney. She was the younger sister in Night of the Comet.
Oh, I love it.
She was very nice, a very sweet woman, and it was a fun conversation with her. The other one was this guy named Matthew Lawrence.
Matt Lawrence, like, whoa.
No, not the Lawrence, not Joey Lawrence.
Joey's little brother.
No, it's another actor who actually has a twin brother. But
Okay.
you'd have to kind of look him up. You'll recognize him the moment you see him. But he actually reached out to me on Twitter after we did an episode for the movie Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Oh, great.
And he had this really amazing story about his involvement in that film, which was really brilliant. And it took us almost a year to get him to come on the show, only because we just never had a chance to connect. But then eventually got the interview, and it was a great interview, great episode. And it's an awesome story.
Oh, is it Matthew Lawrence? Oh, you say, yeah, he's from Eddie and the Cruisers.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah. And you'll see, and it's funny because he has a twin brother.
Fun.
Mitchell
Is his brother also an actor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
That's why, like, you look at him and you'll feel like, I've seen him in a million things. No, you've seen both of them in a million things.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love Eddie. I literally just bought Eddie and the Cruisers last week because I was like, I haven't watched Eddie and the Cruisers in probably 15 years. So I went on Amazon and grabbed it.
Excuse me?
Movie.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, that's great. That means you're getting good penetration.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. I do enjoy doing the show a lot.
Yeah. I like, actually, one of the guests that have been on our show, Michael Feldman, my friend from work. He's a little bit younger, and that's where I'm constantly making references to movies and stuff that he just goes, I'm too young. I've never seen that. And I'm like, stop it. You're not too young. You can watch these movies. They're available.
Yeah, they just.
That's how the podcast started for us. It was I'm always making some reference, and he just looks at me with this blank stare.
Right?
And I was like, you know what I'm talking about, do you? And he'd say no.
I
But I
loaned.
work with a lot of millennials. Everybody I work with.
Yeah, I loaned Michael. We were talking one day, or a couple of us were talking about The Greatest American Hero. And he's just like, I have never even heard of that show. I don't even know what that is. And we were all like, okay. So I brought it the DVDs in. And I'm like, you got to just watch the pilot. Just watch one. You don't have to watch them all. Just watch one. 4 months later, still never watched any of them. And I'm like, just give them back to me. I'm like, I can't trust you. I can't trust you to watch.
That's horrible. They're rebooting that apparently.
I know.
With a woman as the.
So back to the show, we got Sgt Slaughter. He's now in these Street Fighter competitions, and he's fighting a French guy who practices savate, the French art of foot fighting. I always thought it was savate, but you know what? I don't speak French, so it's great. But he's got boxing. They all got boxing gloves on, and they're doing this is straight out of Kickboxer. This is straight out of any Jean-Claude Van Damme movie from the 80s.
Prepare to fight
Yep.
Slaughterhouse style.
And yeah, this is like where the only time you really see one of these other characters. Like all those other people they introduce, you don't get much with. But you do with this guy, who's a little bit of a street fighter, a little bit of the. It keeps making me think of Punch Out.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Bravo,
That
Mr.
French guy
Perez.
and the French guy, apparently, if you're French, you have to have the same weird mustache in cartoons. That's apparently how it works.
I think they're obligated to grow it when they're children.
Yeah, they look like
Israelis in the Mossad.
Well, wasn't the French guy a chef in Punch Out?
I think so. I think so.
I think he was. Yeah, it was very, very Punch Outy. And Big Hippo, and Soda Popinski.
Yep.
Yeah.
This reminds me of
So the Joes they're basically to catch anyone up on happenings on the episode. The Joe team from earlier, they're hiking through the jungle because they know that Sarge was kidnapped and taken to this fight by, you know what? Here's a little observation. They draw Wetsuit. His face looks different throughout this episode. Like the animation model goes on and off.
Yeah. Anytime he moves, it's like right there. When he moves his face, his features so totally change.
Yeah. Like he gets really it's like I think they wanted his model to be a lean face, like a like a narrow face, but then, and it is most of the time, but then occasionally he'll get real square jawed and real like her.
You and he are this any fun?
So now Sergeant Slaughter's about to square off against. Was that guy Dalsim? Is that the guy with the long arms?
I think so, yeah.
From Street Fighter? Yeah.
Yeah.
And this guy apparently has outfitted, the French guy, the guy running the show, has apparently outfitted an ancient bronze statue with a trick thumb. That it serves no purpose but to move hydraulically lifted columns that makes fighting a little harder.
But I like he keeps to the theme of the decor. It's not like they're adding in modern things.
It's true. Sergeant Slaughter's hat never comes off either. By the by,
no. Well, he staples it to his head like Harrison Ford.
And Dalsim guy just fell to his death into a pit.
And you notice sometimes in certain shots, Sergeant Slaughter's hair disappears under his hat.
Yeah. I'll forgive that.
It's just funny. But those the more you watch these, the more you notice the little animation things that they don't do very well.
But they do cool stuff. Well, we're going to commercial break, so we're going to take a second here with Sergeant Slaughter having to kill Wetsuit.
After these messages.
Hey there, Joe and Joe listeners. I want to take a moment to get serious this week. We all love G.I. Joe. And what's G.I. Joe called but a real American hero? And in these last few weeks, America's been dealing with a crisis called Hurricane Harvey. So I'm asking you, my Joe on Joe listeners and friends and family, to reach into your pocket and donate what you can to the Red Cross as they help rescue people who were caught in the path of Hurricane Harvey. The easiest way to do this is to donate by text on your smartphone. All you do is text the word Red Cross, one word, no space, to 90999. That will give $10 to the American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. This will help people affected by these disasters. Now, charges will appear on your wireless bill or they'll be deducted from your prepaid balance, and all purchases must be authorized by your account holder. You must be 18 years of age or have parental permission to participate in this. Message and data rates may apply. But G.I. Joe is called a real American hero, and every week we watch and we marvel and we laugh at and we enjoy watching animated adventures of these heroes going about their day-to-day. But right now, there are real heroes on the ground, some of whom may be listening right now, and they need our help. The Red Cross will help get people back on their feet. They're going to provide emergency services, water, food, shelter. That's what they do. So if you want more information to donate on your own, go to redcross.org or just send that text, Red Cross, to 90999. That'll send $10 immediately to the American Red Cross Disaster Relief Fund. So this week, as we watch Real American Heroes, you have the opportunity to be a real American hero and donate to the Red Cross to help victims of Hurricane Harvey. Thanks for listening. Thanks for donating. And yo, Joe.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
those pale-skinned natives drug our boy the real wetsuit in.
Are you familiar
And
with the Japanese art of kendo?
the guy running the show says to Slaughter, who thinks his wetsuit is, you're going to have to kill a member of wetsuit. You're going to have to kill a member of G.I. Joe.
He's got us mixed up.
So they're going to have to use kendo, which is the Japanese art of stick fighting, because those aren't, like, I don't know how you kill someone with, I mean, I guess you could beat someone to death with a stick, but I feel like kendo, I don't know anything about kendo. Michael, here I am. I'm not going to say I'm a kendo expert.
At least you still have a chance.
It's not a thing that's going to happen. So we get the classic showdown. This is the thing we've seen in so many. Well, we've seen in other episodes of G.I. Joe when Duke and Snake Eyes were in the pit way back in the miniseries. We're going to see it again very soon in Thor Ragnarok when Thor and Hulk have to fight in the gladiator arena. Like, it's always a good trope. You know, where they have to pretend to fight and make it look good and all that stuff.
Good.
This is great. So Sergeant Slaughter purposely is beating on wetsuit in order to make the fight more realistic.
I don't think Sergeant Slaughter knows how to hold back.
No, I don't.
He wouldn't know how to do that.
I don't think so either. I think like he's really like, yeah, let's do to the death. Like, I feel like there's a dark secret in Sergeant Slaughter's past that compels him to be the best he can be. And he's just like, let's fight to the death. I'd be happy to die like this.
Yeah. He had an abusive father that was always pushing him forward.
Something like that. Yeah, I think so. So, Michael, on our show, Joe and Joe, we always like to ask our guests, if you were a member of the Joe or Cobra team, who would you be? What would you do? And what would your code name be?
Well, this was I was struggling with this because I knew this question was coming, and the only thing I could do was more of, I had one that came to mind, and I had a second one that I thought was funnier, but I wasn't sure about it, but my brother insisted I had to go with it. So my guy would be a G.I. Joe.
You're right.
He'd be an explosives expert, and his name would be Mullet.
Mullet?
Mullet. And he'd have one robotic hand because he blew his hand off.
Nice. So
that's the character. Basically, he's just an explosives expert.
And he must rock a massive mullet, right?
He rocks like a serious mullet. It's not like a pretend mullet. It's down like halfway down between his shoulder blades.
Like he started growing it in the 8th grade.
Yes.
And it never stopped.
And he's been partying in the back.
Yeah.
And keeping his business in the front since he was a small child.
It's Joe Dirt level mullet.
Yes, and I forgot I had to throw in, like, he talks like this. He's Mullet Man from the hills of Tennessee.
So he's Mullet Man from the hills of Tennessee. Okay.
Yep, that's where he's from, and he's all about G.I. Joe. He's a big believer in G.I. Joe.
Oh, fantastic! And he's got a robotic hand.
Yep.
Prosthetic or robotic?
Robotic.
Okay, so it's fully functional. Does it do anything like special? Like, does it like have a lockpick in it, or you know what I mean, like a little laser so he can help defuse bombs and things like that?
It does. In true G.I. Joe fashion, his index finger can be removed and replaced with 3 different items.
Oh, love it.
He's got wire cutters. He's got a screwdriver, and a third thing. I can't think right now.
Wire cutters. Screwdriver. Oh, and you need a pincer, like a tweezer.
There you go.
So,
I love it.
Where is my new assassin? Why, over here, Cobra Commander.
Hey, fat breath.
I'm picturing the manufacturing of this figure, and the mullet itself would be like an accessory. Like maybe even that plugs into the back, into the peg in the back.
Yes.
Like it's so
In
epic.
there.
Like it's so long. It's not an attached part of the head.
That's it.
I
only thought to it was it would be like Zanzibar. It'd be like, actual hair.
Okay. Yeah.
There are
only 4 G.I. Joes
Yeah.
over there.
Well, listen, either way, however the mullet is designed, that's obviously the main play feature of your action figure. That's what all the kids are going to be. And then fast forward 20 years and they're being like, I have a mullet, but I lost his actual mullet. Does anyone have a good, clean mullet for the figure mullet?
That's it.
Yeah, that's totally it. And it's going to be like, it'll be discolored because they'll have made it out of different type of plastic.
I'm going back to help our brothers in arms.
So we've got on the show, Cobra Commander recognized those guys as G.I. Joes. as both G.I. Joes. And they've now escaped, and they go run into the room full of all the Street Fighters and basically say, let's go, Sumo, with your butt cheeks hanging out. And Cobra's fighting. These guys look like vampires.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah, they're obviously people who've been living inside this temple for
completely.
however long.
Completely. Storm Shadow makes a rare appearance.
How's that for starters?
We haven't had Storm Shadow on the show in a long time. You know what I'm saying?
No? Yeah, it just makes it, and it's like it's a cameo. It's a glorified cameo.
Yeah, it really is. He doesn't say anything. But I feel like the animators were like, hey, we're doing a show about ninjas. Why don't we put an actual ninja in there?
Here's a crazy idea.
Yeah, here's a nutty idea.
That's what part of that fascinates you. Like, this is a ninja competition. Like, why wetsuit? Why is wetsuit the one they picked? I guess he's the toy they had to highlight, but
apparently, but like that tells me he just leads he's a Navy SEAL. Oh, that's cool. The Firebat's got its wings unfolded or folded up. So he's a Navy SEAL, so we know he's a bad dude, but like
he's not the pigeon we want.
He just likes to get punched in the face.
Your fault.
I guess so.
Yeah. Well, another great moment of Odd Couple moment where the two argue. Oh, there's Bazooka. We haven't seen Bazooka in forever.
Anyway,
Don't you know? Serpentor.
And here we find out
put a contract out on
that
him.
the whole point of the competition was the winner was going to assassinate Serpentor because Cobra Commander was hiring him to assassinate Serpentor.
This is the part that bugs me about the episode, because it was like, well, once it was established that you were going to assassinate somebody, like, wait, you don't want to know who you're supposed to. They just sort of blow past that. Like, Sgt. Slaughter pays no attention to that.
Well,
like, it made more sense to go along with this thing to see where it was going to go.
Yeah.
Because it could be like the president of the United States for all you know.
Well, that's the other thing. But I mean, it raises the question of they're offended that the whole point is to assassinate someone. So obviously it's G.I. Joe. So they're like, God, we got to stand against that, right? But then when they find out that the someone was Serpentor, Sgt. Slaughter's like, darn it, I would have killed the crap out of Serpentor. Like, I would have murdered him. Like, that's
right.
Because it's Serpentor, it's okay to have murdered him. But like, if it were like, using real world politics, like one of the Kim Jong-uns or ills, like if it were Kim Jong, be like, no, that's not a good. Oh, Serpentor, yeah, let's assassinate him.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That's we're good.
Some people deserve assassinating, and he's one of those people, I guess.
Yeah, apparently. So at least in Sgt. Slaughter's world, darn it, I could have assassinated someone. Rats.
I guess I'll have to wait another time.
Totally. It's a really fun episode, though. I'm really glad. What did you think? Your overall thoughts on it?
I think it's great. It's a very classic setup. But I think that's what lets it be fun. There's that part of me that bugs me a little bit, that he doesn't want to find out more, which seemed kind of like an odd choice.
Yeah, well,
plus also like
Sgt. Slaughter's not exactly Sherlock Holmes or Batman.
No, that's true. That's true. But then there's also the leatherneck wetsuit thing, which seems like they kind of throw in there, but they didn't play up much.
Yeah.
Even though that's supposed to be like I guess that's the Alpine Bazooka relationship or something.
Completely the Alpine Bazooka relationship. Yeah, you're right.
But overall, it's a great episode, and I still, even though I make fun of some of the little odd things of the animation, I still think the show was one of the better animated shows of its time.
Completely agree, 100%. Yeah, and I think the animation on the show was pretty good. I really liked the character design on the guy that was running the whole thing, the French dude. He had a cool thing going on in his eyebrows, where they didn't just like give him like solid eyebrows. Like as they tapered off towards the sides of his face, it got all hash marked, and they really kept it on the model for most of the episode. It gave it a nice look of depth to the figure.
Yeah, so, it's pretty cool.
I'm a fan, man. Well, listen, thank you, Michael, for being a part of the show.
Well, thank you. I got it's funny because I listened to the show a lot in the beginning, and you had even referenced me in one of your early episodes.
Oh,
with your wife.
Awesome.
But then I forget why. But
I was like, I hate this guy on Instagram.
Stupid Joe's reassembled. But But every time I watched it, when I was listening to the show, I kept wanting to watch the episode because I hadn't really watched it. So it was driving me nuts. So I stopped listening for a while.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Well, sorry, but I still subscribed. I just was not listening because I was trying to catch up and watch the episode you're talking about because I needed to be able to see them. And then I did, and then I started listening recently, and then I realized you were coming to the end of to 2 seasons. So I got nervous. I'm like, well, crap, I guess I should try and see if I can get on the show because I'd kick myself if I didn't at least reach out. Try to be a part.
Well, I'm really glad you did. Did you happen to listen to last week's episode?
I did.
You did. So then you know that we are going to continue the show.
And I've never seen any of the Deke episodes.
Oh, well, cool.
Actually, that's not true. I think I saw a few minutes of one at some point or another.
Well, I know a lot of people have seen Operation Dragonfire. That was the 5-parter that kicked off the Deke series. That got a lot of air. I think more people that I know than not are familiar with that. But then after that, that's probably what I remember seeing. Yeah, after that it goes off the cliff. But I'm excited. We're doing it.
That's great. I think that's great.
I'm so stoked. So I'm again happy to have you on, Michael. Thank you so much. At Joe's Reassembled, that's on Twitter. Also, you have a Facebook page for that, and then on Instagram, you're at Joe's_Reassembled.
That's right. Because somebody else apparently is Joe's Reassembled.
Yeah, well, let's find that person and say do something better with it. Otherwise, quit squatting and give it to my friend Michael.
That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you so much. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you sharing. That's how this show grows, and that's how we reach more ears, and that's how we have more G.I. Joe fun each and every week. So we'll see you next week. Michael, have a lovely day. And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.